I'm back over on the mill now, and what we're going to work on next is this pivot piece. We just cut out of our blank over on the lathe, got it to size. What we're going to work on now is cutting this groove out. This groove is, let's see, it's 825 thousandths, 825 from the top edge down to the bottom. So we'll plunge down 825 thousandths, and the width is 875 thousandths. The way I like to do cutting out grooves like that, I don't know that it's right. As I've said 1,000 times before, I'm just an amateur hobbyist, retired computer programmer. But what I like to do is go ahead and make my work my way down on the center. I've got this centered now, got the table centered on the x-axis. So we'll work down to our 825 thousandths. And then I'll step the table over a little bit at a time, cut one side, go to the other side, and work that so that we're conventional milling all the time. We're never climb milling when we're working on these sides. So I've got the z-axis zeroed out. There's 50 thousandths. Let's see what it'll do. So I'm going to turn a little coolant on it now, coolant mist, and continue this process, and going to cut this down, like I said before, 825 thousandths deep. I'm actually cutting about 75 thousandths at a time now. All right, now that we're to depth, say we want this width to be 875 thousandths. We're using a 7/16 end mill, which is 438 thousandths. So 438 from 875 leaves 438, 437 and a half. We want to step over now on this. If we divide that in half, that's 219 thousandths on each side of zero. Now I'm going to take it easy, very easy, and only do about 20 thousandths at a time. I'm sure this end mill could take a whole lot more than that at the time, but we're held in here. It's a round piece, we're held flat, but I just don't want to take a chance of kicking it out of the mill. So we're only going to start out taking about 20 or 25 thousandths off of each side. Now I'm going to step 20 thousandths, actually 25 on the other side of zero. Now I'll go to 50 thousandths each time, just keep increasing it by 25 thousandths at a time. That was 100 thousandths on each side. So I'll just continue working that down, 25 thousandths per side at a time. Now we're ready for our final cut. What I'll do is just take the calipers, see just how close we are to what we had planned to be. All right, that's 836 thousandths. So 875 minus 836 divided by 2 says 19.5 thousandths per side, and our calculation DRO said 19 thousandths, so we're right on the money. So I'll go to 219 thousandths on this side now, and 219 on the other side. Okay, while I'm right here, let me get you tied in there a little bit more again. While I'm right here, I'm going to flatten out these edges right here. That's a pretty sharp edge on the top right there. I'm going to touch off and come down about 25 thousandths. We need flats on that for when we set it up later here in the mill. So there's our slot that the micrometer will set down in, cut into this pivot piece. All right, now that we've got the groove cut milled in each piece, the groove that the micrometer will set in, we need to drill and tap a hole for the tightening screw to go in. And I know this is unorthodox, but to keep from changing collets and end mills and, collets and chuck, I'm going to put actually put an end mill in here. This is a 5/16. I've got the piece located on center on the y-axis. This distance through here is 0.7. So I've moved it over on the x-axis to half that. And I'm going to mill down with this 5/16 just enough to get a flat. I'm just, like I say, I'm just milling until the front edge of the mill flattens out, comes out to the edge. Now we're going to put a 1/4 tap drill in. And as short as my drill is, I shouldn't have to center drill this. It shouldn't walk on me. And then finally we're going to power tap it. I have a 2-flute spiral 1/4 tap here. Here's where I want to slow it back down, though. And just till it grabs. And once we get it a little tighter, and once it grabs, I'll just let go of the handle and reverse it. And with a little deburring, we have our hole for our tightening rod drilled and tapped. I have the piece repositioned in the vise now and centered up. I've got it laid flat, like such, and I've centered between the gap and the remaining material from the top to the bottom here of this pivot piece. What we're going to do now is drill out a 5/8 inch hole. We'll step drill that with a couple steps. I'm going to spot it first. And I'm starting with a 3/8 drill. And I'm going to have to raise a little bit. This might be a couple 64ths below a 3/8, but just something to step with. And I'm going to slow down for this 5/8. All right, that's got that hole drilled in that. That will be the expansion hole. So I'll continue this process. We got one more step to do on the pivot pieces, and that'll be to cut this slit right here, this slot in there. We'll use the slitting saw for that. All right, we've got our pivot back in the mill vise again. What we're going to do now is use the slitting saw, and let's see if I can get it to focus. Make this slit right here. That's what will allow this piece to expand, to widen out and tighten in the pocket we milled in the upright. This is a 3-inch slitting saw, and it is just going to barely reach deep enough. And matter of fact, I may have to clean it out with a file in there, hacksaw in the file. But what I'm going to do is use I've got it hanging outside the vise just a little right now, so I'm going to just touch off there, 0 the Z-axis, come down and just touch there, and that's 820, so that should be 410 to the center. That is just starting to touch. And it is pushing through. So there is our pivot. I'm on and focus. All right, there's our pivot with our gap milled in, our hole for the tightening screw, our 5/8 inch expansion hole, and our slitting saw. That's the smallest slitting saw I had. It's a, let's see if I can see, a 1/16. That was the thinnest slitting saw I had. It really doesn't matter, just because it's not going to squeeze together, it's going to expand out. What I'm using for the base is a piece of A36. This looks like it may have been flame cut. It's 1/2 inch thick, 4 inches in diameter. We'll use the center square and get us a center location. And just locate about the center there, punch that. Now we're going to turn to the lathe and friction drive this. We're going to put the live center in this hole. We're going to press this up against the chuck jaws, and then we're just going to turn this outside just enough to clean it up. That's all we're interested in, is cleaning it up. No particular size in mind. Again, just clean it up and chamfer the edges. Okay, hopefully you can see what's going on over here. I've got the tailstock pulled up, Got the life center in it. And I'm going to put lots of pressure on that. And as I said, this appears to be flame cut. So it's hard on this edge. We're likely going to get a spark or two as we cut through that, but I'm going to take it very easy on there. Being friction fed, being an interrupted cut, and all the other things, I'm not going to press this at all here. Just trying to find the high spot right now. All we're doing is turning this enough to make it round and to clean that edge up. I'm taking about 10 thousandths per cut. Okay, that's getting very close now. We're getting that stringy chip, and I'm not hearing the interruptions. So I'm going to make one more pass on it, and then we'll stop the lathe and look at it. I didn't hear any interruptions. And it looks good all the way around. So we'll chamfer those edges, and this part of the base will be completed. Still got to drill some holes in it, of course. There's the dressed up base. I'll continue this process, of course, on the remaining pieces. Now that the base is round, what we want to do is mark us a center line across there. Just scribe a center line. Then with our calipers, we'll mark a hole at 0.9 inches and at 2.2 cumulative. Then we want to take the center section of our upright, and from this edge that's on the concave edge, we want to mark at 0.45 and at 1.75. We also want a center line. And since that was 3/4 inch material, yep, 0.375. Now, I'm not going to try to move the camera over there, but what I'm going to do is carry this to the drill these two marks with 11/64, and then countersink them for a, let's see, I've got some. I'll countersink them for an 832 socket head cap screw. I'll carry this back over and drill and tap these for 832. I'll drill with an 832 tap drill and then tap at 832. We've got one more piece to machine before we start our cleaning, painting and assembly, and that's this little Delrin shoe right here. So I've got a piece in there. I've got it turned down to 0.6 diameter. We're going to drill a tap drill for a 1/4-20, but we're only going to go in about 200 thousandths. Now I'm going to start with the 1/4 bottom tap. There's not enough depth in there to use a taper tap and then follow behind it with the bottom tap. This will not be a through hole. So I'm just going to ease that up there and try to make myself stop long before I pull the threads out of it. All we want is a couple of good threads in there to get our piece of rod started in. Just to test that, just to be sure that I do have some threads in there. Which I do. That's plenty enough to lock tight in there. Now we're going to take the parting tool. We went about 200 thousandths deep in there with the drill. So let's see what 300 thousandths looks like. That should be good right there to part that off. I'm sure that's going to fall. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get the remainder of these cut, and then I'll come back and show you how we're going to flatten off and taper this end down here, the contact end. I have the 5 pieces drilled and tapped on one end, flat on the other. And what I've got in the lathe now is a piece of 1/4 rod. I'm just going to hand tighten that on. And the only tool I've got here, nothing really special about it. It's simply a 45-degree angle cut on the end of a piece of high-speed steel. I'm going to use that first to face off that little tit off the end. Afraid you won't be able to see a whole lot right here. Now we'll just give that a clean face. Now I'm just going to set this here to about its full depth, that 45, and just barely ease that into here. Then I'll take the file and just round those edges. And if that piece is, which is obviously kind of tight because it was pulling it in there. This is a pair of channel lock brand that have slick jaws in them. They were specially ordered for a project I did a couple years ago, I think. But just enough to loosen that up. And there we have a clean shoe to press against the micrometer. I've got the sides put back on all 5 of our uprights now. When I put the screws in this time, I used some Loctite red on them to seal these screws. We never want to see them come out again. And now I've got some 2-part epoxy, and I'm going to fill up each one of these screw heads, being a bit liberal with it. This that I'm using is a product called Quick Steel. It says it sets in 4 minutes, full cure in 1 hour. I will let it cure overnight before I try to sand it. I'm going to continue that process on both sides for all 5 pieces. Alright, I've got the screw heads epoxied up on all 5 of our pieces, and like I say, I'm going to let that cure overnight. I did learn something about this quick steel though. Don't mix up much of it at the time, because when it says it sets in 4 minutes, it sets in 4 minutes and you can't work it anymore. So I had to mix that up in very small batches to get that task completed. Next thing we're going to do, well, one other thing I done, I carried each one of our pivot pieces over to the lap and lap both sides of that, being sure removed any burrs that was on them. The base, I lapped them good enough to be certain that I got rid of any of that scale off the hot roll. Done that to all 5 sets. Now we're gonna get ready, one last step before we actually do the painting. The knobs we're going to use on the end are these, the threaded 1/4-20. I have some 1/4-20 stainless steel rod here, 1.5 inches long. I'm going to, of course, use a little Loctite on it. Get that bottom out, and I'll let that set to be sure it cures well. We won't put these on, the little shoes on, until the final assembly when we thread it through this piece. So I'm going to get these, the knobs and the threaded rods done, and then I'm not going to try to video the painting. It's just rattle can spray paint. And I debated on what color to do them with. I said in my Facebook post when I first showed this one, my prototype, and said that's what I was going to do for this year's What's in Your Box campaign. I said I probably wouldn't paint it the red and black, but it is coming out of my shop, and my shop colors are red and black, so I'm going to do the finished products exactly like this piece, with the red base and the black riser. The pivot right here will have just a coat, just a clear coat on it, and this, of course, being stainless steel, will not need anything on that. So I'll bring you back when I've got the final assembly, and we'll do a recap on this project. Okay, folks, I think I'm going to call this project completed. I've got the uprights mounted onto the base. I've got some little feet on the base just to keep it from sliding around on the workbench. The pivot can be removed by raising it straight up. When it's like that, obviously it will not come out. And again, the way these work, all right, that clamps it in, but then you get it in the position that you want it, the angle you want it, and tighten down just a little more. And what that does is expand. It expands from this section here and squeezes, pinches this in on the inside, an inside pinch, if you will. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video series. I definitely enjoyed building them, but what's more important, I hope whoever winds up with them get some use and enjoyment and pleasure out of having them. I'll probably let this paint on them dry for a couple more days. It's been extremely wet and humid here. We got some pretty bad storms in this area last night, but I'm going to let it cure a little bit more, round up some packing material, and then I'm going to send this on off to Keith. Each one of them will have one of my toolbox stickers with them as well, and as I said, I hope who winds up with them gets a lot of use out of them, and we'll see you on the next video.